Hey, it's Keith from Outlaw Speed Shop, and as you saw, I am working on a Dune Daddy by Hot Wheels. This was sent to me by a customer, and he wanted me to make it cool. He sent me the casting along with the four wheels, and the wheels kind of inspired me to do something a little bit more street, which was kind of what he wanted, something cool, something street worthy. And that was a challenge because I really didn't like this casting at all, to be honest with you. But it's got this plastic wheel on top. Um, it's got some semblance of a dune buggy. I believe that's what the intention was. The full roof thing kind of bothered me a little bit, and it just was one of those things that I didn't think I wanted on there. So, but I really had no direction at this point, so I figured I'd start by swapping out the wheels and kind of seeing where inspiration took me, which is what I do with most of my projects. I usually have a rough idea, but I don't really go into a project very rarely with intention of what it's going to look like. Um, there were no axles included in the package that he sent, so I have some 1/16th rod that I'm using, or wire, and this stuff's pretty decent. I have no problems with it. It's a little hard to crimp. More often than not, I have a steel block and I'll punch it down, and it mushrooms over the end just enough where you can't get the wheel out. So right here, I'm just kind of fitting it. I'm getting a length. The front and the rear are slightly different as far as length, so I do each one individually. And sometimes I do that too, depending upon what I want for a stance, as far as if the wheel wells are a little deeper or wider than, so let's say in the back than the front, instead of just making them the same, I'll fit them to see. Like the front is just a smidge narrower than the back on these. So, it's most often you have to have different lengths. So here I have the wheels on it. I'm starting to get some inspiration. And I decided that at this point, I'd already tapped it and drilled it. I didn't really record, and I usually don't record that. It's kind of boring. But I fit it just to see how it was going to work, make sure the wheels rolled. And that, for me, gave me enough inspiration to kind of have an idea where I was going to go with this. So I decide I am going to hack the roof off. Dune buggies really aren't supposed to have roofs, in my opinion. I was a kid in the 70s, but my father was a dune buggy guy. Originally, when I was born, he actually owned one. We towed it back from Texas when he was stationed in the Air Force, back here to Massachusetts, and he was always a dune buggy Volkswagen guy. So the Myers Mannix and those kind of things is what I grew up with as a kid. So I kind of pulled my inspiration from there, and I began taping off. And I'm just doing this more so I have a rough guide. Sometimes when you start using a cutoff wheel, or if you're using a jeweler's saw, it's easy to get carried away with what you're going to cut and have a rough idea. With a tape mark, makes it a little bit easier. So for me, I'm using a cutoff wheel, and I start with the front. And it was a little bit of a heads up for me. I was going to cut a little bit further deeper towards the rear and leave more of the windshield, and I end up deciding to cut straight across so that the top of the windshield was open, and I just thought it had a different look. There wasn't a lot of beef at the top, the way that the opening on the roof was, so it would have been so thin, it would have been paper thin, and I didn't think it looked good. So I stripped it, wire wheel it to kind of get the crusties out of all the little holes and cracks and crevices. The body overall, it's a brand new casting, so there really wasn't too many issues. I do this so that I can have a nice rough, well, I say rough, it's just enough to rough it up a little bit. I'll do this, and then I'll use some 4/0 steel wool to really get a good bite, and it helps the primer stick a little bit as far as I'm concerned. I found when I didn't use the steel wool, I had a little bit more primer issues. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but I find that roughing it up with the steel wool, it's not really roughing it, it's actually cleaning it really well. But you gotta, when you're done with this, make sure you wash it with soap and water. These little fibers from the 4/0 get everywhere, and it's amazing. It's everywhere. That's why I have the paper towel down. So once again, I'll fit it, and I'm really starting to dig where it's going, but there's this big gap that you wouldn't normally see when the roof was there, so you can start to see the post in between the interior in the thing, in the actual casting itself. So I've had this milliput that I've got maybe 2 weeks ago, and I was looking for an opportunity to try it. So this was the first time, so I kneaded up the 2 pieces, and I put it inside and I let it sit overnight. And obviously I made too much. But it was hard to tell without fitting exactly how much I needed, so it goes a little bit too far down the post. I only need maybe 1/4 of an inch sticking down from the top of the back of the roof there. I probably got 3/4 of an inch, just because I had so much. It was just easier to form this way. But it grinds real easy. It sands super smooth. I really like the stuff. I can't wait to use it again. So I'll go through the phase of making sure I fit it, because the rear deck behind the rear seat has got some bumps and grooves and stuff. So you want to make sure it's, you don't want to paint it and then have to start sanding it down more. So take the extra time now and fit it, make sure it looks good, which is what I'm doing. And also the windshield, the one-piece windshield goes all the way to the back, and there's actually tail lights that stick out between the casting and the interior piece that goes out the back. It's just a real sliver. It's like an 1/8 inch, but you got to take that into consideration as well. So once again, I'm screwing it together, making sure everything looks good, making sure that the milliput that I put in there actually, once it's screwed down, stayed secure and didn't obscure anything. Excuse me. And I'm going to do the interior a brownish color. I'm taking the Citadel Paints Xandri Dust and a little bit of, I want to say it's Scrag Brown. I wanted just a little bit darker than like a tan color, and the Xandri Dust was just a little too light. So I'm just slowly adding a little bit to like darken it up. Then I'll add some water to thin it out, and I'll paint the interior that color. With the color I'm going with the car, I just thought it was a nice contrast. And the black, there's a lot of detail in this interior actually, and the black I think hit it. So I wanted to make sure that I went with a little bit lighter of a color that made it stand out more. And if you thin this stuff out just enough, sometimes it may take 2 coats to put on, but you won't see any brush marks, and it goes on really nice. It's pretty much all I use now for painting details and interiors and stuff like that. So I'm going to do that, and I've got this sepia wash that it's got a little bit, obviously a little bit of a reddish brown tint to it. So right there, I'm just trying a little bit to see how it's going to look. If you can see, I also painted the horns that stick out the front with my Multoff chrome pen. So I'm trying to see how this is going to look, and it's going to give it just a little bit of a tint, which is kind of what I was after. And I'm going to also go back over it again with a different color wash. But what this will do is it's just giving it that little bit of a red tint without going crazy. And because it's a wash, it'll sit inside the cracks and crevices and give it a little bit more depth and detail. So then I'm going to go over it with this Agrath Earth Shade, which is a definite browner shade, and go over and hit all the important areas with that as well, the seats and with this seat belts and stuff like that, so it'll really seep in and get the details. You can put it on heavy, but if you start to see it pool up, you can actually just kind of use your brush to pick it up almost like a sponge, because you don't want that wherever it sits in pools. It's going to essentially stain wherever it sits, so you want to make sure it's a nice even area without too much. You can see right there I'm kind of picking up the pooling areas, and you go, when you're done, just kind of look it over one more time and make sure you got it. So I get the body primed. I'm trying this Sparklescent Red from Createx. I've been dying to use this, and I've been kind of hesitant because there really wasn't anything I could think of to put it on, and this is perfect opportunity. So I'm mixing it with some Balancing Clear and Reducer, and this has got the for me, the dune buggy looks. The old dune buggies are almost like boats, same material with the fiberglass, and they had that sparkle look to it. So I just thought this was going to be perfect. In hindsight, I probably should have put it over a darker primer. I wanted it to pop, and I was afraid. In the past I've done some reds and I put it over like a gray primer, like a dark gray primer, and it muted the red, which at the time was what I was after. This stuff, it almost makes it pink, which is okay. in certain lights it looks pink, and in certain lights it looks red. Right now in the video, as I'm watching it, it's definitely pink, and as I was painting it, it looked pink. So I started putting it on a little bit heavier and a little bit heavier. I probably put 4 coats on this easily, but it's definitely red. But yeah, it looks pink. Either way, it still came out wicked cool. I'm really happy with the color, and I'll show at the end when I do the reveal. You can definitely see the sparkle under a certain light, and it definitely looks like a dune buggy. So I did a lot of the details and everything else, and this thing just came out really good, and I know he's happy. I've showed him pictures, and I can't wait for him to actually get it in his hands. This was a fun project. It was a little bit of a challenge. I was kind of a little worried what he was going to think, but in the end, it came out really, really good. I'm super happy with it. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a good Easter, and I'll catch you on the next one.